Hey everybody. Today I wanted to make this video to share a technique that may be helpful in placing buildings near resources. So on this test map, I have this big, huge gold pile, and I want for every player in the game to place a mining camp as close as possible to the player while still being close to the gold pile. So what I have done is I've given the gold an actor area to say actor area is 1 and the actor area radius is 1. And if I place a mining camp in actor area 1, we should think that that would place the mining camp within 1 tile of the gold. Now let's restart and see what happens. So now that we've restarted, we can notice that every player in the game has their mining camp. We can notice that all of the mining camps get placed on the bottom left and top left of this square here, and none of them get placed on the right side. And that has to do with the fact that when we place objects in actor areas, it has to be the origin tile of the object in question that has to be placed in the particular actor area. For any object that is an odd number of tiles in length, the origin of the object would be the tile in the middle. But for objects that have an even number of tiles in length, for example, this mining camp is 2 by 2, and we can kind of see that its origin should be the tile on the right. Because if we look all around our gold pile, in every case where the mining camp was successfully able to be placed, the rightmost tile is within that 1 tile radius over here. And that would also explain why no mining camps were able to generate on this side or this side. Because, for example, if the mining camp had generated over here, then the rightmost tile, the one over here, would not be in the 1 tile radius of the gold. So that's how that works, and let's see what happens if we were to increase this actor area radius from 1 to 2. So now that we've increased the actor area radius, we can see that the players on this side of the map now are able to have their mining camps spawn in more favorable locations. But if we take a look on the players on this side of the map, their mining camps are now spawning farther away from the gold. We can see that if we were to draw an imaginary line 2 tiles away from this gold, we can see that this particular mining camp still has its rightmost tile inside of that actor area radius. So this is still a legitimate place for this mining camp, even though it's quite in a bad place in terms of being very far away from this gold. So this kind of phenomenon can make it annoying to place buildings around resources in some cases, because the placement of the building may vary depending on what side of the map you're on. If you happen to be on this side of the map, you get a mining camp that's very close to the gold. And if you're on this side of the map, you get a mining camp that's very far from the gold. But instead of generating gold, let's try to generate something else. We'll change gold to oak tree. And instead of placing in the actor area, we'll say place on forest zone. So let's see if this changes anything. So now that we have our map here, we can see that when we use the attribute place on forest zone, that means that the object in question will be within 1 tile of the forest. But with the notable difference is that it doesn't seem to matter which tile of the object is within 1 tile of the forest. We can see that the mining camps for these players got placed pretty much adjacent to the forest, whereas the same case is true over here. All of these players over here had their mining camp spawn adjacent to the forest. So that's certainly interesting, and maybe we could kind of use that phenomenon to our advantage. So let's say that after we place the oak tree, we can put a second object gold. So now we've effectively achieved a better placement for the mining camp with respect to the gold pile, with the caveat that now there's a big tree in the middle of the gold pile, but with a few simple RMS effects, we should be able to get rid of this tree without a problem. So let's go into the player setup section and say effect amount set attribute of the oak tree hit points set to 0. So that will chop the tree immediately. We'll say storage value will be set to 0 also, so it dies right away. And then we will say HETR dead ID. We will set that to -1. So it just goes away instantly instead of turning into a stump. So now when we have those effects in place, the tree is removed, and what we are left with is a much better placement for mining camps for all players in the game with respect to the gold pile. So that's nice, but in a real map, we're not going to just have a forest zone just in the middle here. We're going to have a bunch of wood all over the place. So what's going to prevent the mining camps from spawning on another place, a different wood line, for example, if these borders of the map were forest? We can see that now, for most of the players in the game, the closest forest to the player is on the outside and not necessarily on the forest zone that would constitute this gold pile. But what we can do, in conjunction with place on forest zone, we can still use the actor area that we had up here also. So we will say actor area to place in is going to be #1. And now we can see that all of the mining camps are now back in the middle around this gold, even though the closest forest zone happened to be on the outside for the majority of the players. And we can use this kind of methodology with combining forest zones and actor areas to solve all sorts of kind of issues we may have. Let's say, for example, that we were going to place a lumber camp also. So if we do place a lumber camp, how do we know that the lumber camp isn't going to snap to a forest zone that was constituting the gold, if the gold happened to be closer than the nearest wood line? Well, we have an actor area around the forest zone, which is gold. So if I just say avoid actor area 1, now we can see that the yellow player has his lumber camp in the nearest wood line instead of the forest zone that was constituting the gold. And we could even approach this a different way if we wanted to. So let's just say we're just going to forget avoiding actor area 1 for now. So up at the top here, before we create the forest zone which constitutes the gold, we will say we will create a bunch of object 278. And we will say create a lot of these objects and say place on forest zone. And then we will give these objects an actor area 2, radius 1. And instead of the lumber camp avoiding the gold, we will say make sure you get placed on the forest zone, which actually constitutes the wood line. So we will say actor area to place in is going to be 2. So now we can see that that worked in a similar way. The lumber camp for the yellow player is now snapping to the nearest wood line instead of the gold, which is actually a closer forest zone. And obviously these dead fish trap graphics aren't necessary. They're just a good indicator. If you wanted to get rid of those, we can just use a resource delta -60 And placing a bunch of these placeholder objects on the forest zone could actually be helpful in a different way because, for example, if we wanted, for example, mills or mining camps to avoid being too close to the forest, we can't use an avoid forest zone attribute because that would kind of contradict our place in forest zone attribute. But we could say avoid actor area 2, for example, and actor area 2 constitutes the real wood lines so that the mining camp would stay away from the real wood line but still be placed on the gold. So that technique may seem a little strange at first glance, but it actually does help us in allowing us to have better placements for buildings with respect to resources, while still being as consistent as possible for all the players in the game, compared to just relying on actor areas, which is the way things are typically done. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to talk about in this video. So thanks for watching.